Hi there, I'm Rajini Vaidyanathan and welcome to this Facebook live from the Democratic National Convention in Pennsylvania. Now last week we were at the Republican National Convention where Donald Trump painted a very bleak picture of the United States, and of course Mr. Trump's campaign motto is Making America Great Again. But this week the Democratic Party see America in a different, more optimistic light. We had the First Lady Michelle Obama earlier in the week say that America was the greatest country on earth. So which vision of America do you think fits best, and who do you think should lead the country going forward? Send us your questions and comments. We have a great panel with us to discuss this. First of all, we have Hollywood actress Alison Pill. Hi Alison, why are you here at the convention?
I am here with the Creative Coalition, which advocates for arts funding like the NEA and arts in education as a way to keep people in schools, and also just to observe and take in this amazing time.
Well, welcome, Alison. We also have activist Jose Antonio Vargas. Tell us why you're here.
I'm actually a journalist myself, and I'm here. I have an organization called Define American, and we're all about trying to elevate the conversation on immigration outside of just, laws and pieces of paper, especially in this Donald Trump era.
Okay, well, thanks both of you. We also have our very own Anthony Zurcher. So, Anthony, we're talking about two different visions of America. How do the two different parties characterize the country?
Absolutely. You mentioned that Donald Trump painted a dark picture of America. It's a nostalgic picture of America, hearkening back to what he sees as a better time. I don't think there's any better illustration of this in how he dealt with the immigration issue. They had a parade of people who were victims of undocumented workers who were talking about the pain that they suffered, and it was painting the picture of a dangerous nation that is spinning out of control. Contrast that with here in the Democratic National Convention, where you had a parade of immigrants who were talking about how great it was and how America was changing for the better. Both sides have very distinct views of what's happening to the country, and they both point towards immigration as what's causing it, either positively or negatively.
Well, thanks, Anthony. Let's bring you in, Jose. You're an undocumented immigrant, which technically means you're here.
At the Republican convention, we're all just a bunch of illegal aliens. I don't know, are we from Mars or something? I mean, it's been striking to me the language that just gets used, and this is where I think words really matter, right, in terms of how we frame the conversation.
Let me just ask you, because you are undocumented,
yeah,
you've been very
legally
open about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Many people would say that the country's too soft on immigration now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You mean too soft, meaning they're letting too many people in?
That's certainly what we heard at the Republican convention
this is where
last
I think the failure of the media, especially here in the United States, has been really immense. Meaning, to frame the conversation around, violence and what people are doing negatively, instead of actually talking about the fact that undocumented workers like me contribute billions of dollars in taxes. According to the Social Security Administration, if it wasn't for us, we are actually the ones keeping Social Security solvent, while people call us a bunch of criminals and illegals and aliens, right? And you talk about the really difference between these parties. That's why I think the arts, right? Like, how do we insist on telling these stories and using culture and art to really tell people what the narratives are and what's really happening, instead of just all the politics, which to me is so toxic.
Let's bring you in, Alison. You've been in the US for more than a decade, but you're actually Canadian.
I am.
So another immigrant on the panel. A lot of people are saying, because of this election and the discussion, that they want to move to Canada if Donald Trump wins.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I think people on the other side will say the same about if Hillary is elected. I mean, it's a really everybody feels left out of this election. Like, there's the possibility that they cannot stomach one or both of the candidates, which is a really weird place to be. I also think. I think the people said, a lot of liberals said this when George W. Bush was reelected. They didn't. I mean, there is, immigration is hard. Leaving your country is really hard, and finding jobs and doing it legally. It'll be interesting to see. Do I think people will move away? There's a definite possibility, but I also think. Your day-to-day life is governed a lot by local politics too, and as big as it may be in the White House, there's also all these down ticket members who may or may not improve your life enough on the ground in your neighborhood that you feel okay about it.
But Anthony, this election, many traditional Democratic voters, according to the polls, are going to desert the party. mainly because of the issue of immigration, but other issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Democratic Party has traditionally been the party of the white working class, and we've seen that change. Donald Trump is trying to lay claim to voters. If you look at polls right now, voters who are without college education, white males, that traditionally has been a Democratic voting bloc, but he sees a way of making an inroad, particularly here in states like Pennsylvania. They feel that their jobs are disappearing, and they point towards immigration. They say immigration is taking away their jobs. Justified or not, Donald Trump has created a picture for them, given them someone to blame, and they can say, well, the reason why we don't have manufacturing jobs is because of trade deals like NAFTA and because of immigration, bringing in people who can work for less. It's eating into the Democratic base.
Just a comment here from Abara Nua saying, the RNC insists that if you want to be an American, follow the rules and the laws. It's a simple message, but it's misinterpreted to mean something different. I think this Project Fear is actually a conspiracy theory created by the media. Jose.
Project Fear. You know, it was fascinating being at the RNC last week, and I did Fox News at the RNC last week. And this whole idea that they, you know, had all these parents of American citizens who lost their kids to undocumented workers, as if that's what's happening every day, right? They pick 4 people to represent 11 million people. That's really, really unfair. And, you know, you just talked about, by the way, people moving to Canada, right? Like, I don't have any other choice, you know? Like, this is my country. This is where I grew up. I am not going anywhere, whether or not Donald Trump gets elected president, right? And I think the undocumented people, like in Los Angeles, where we both live, right? The Los Angeles is home to 500,000, about probably the epicenter of the country's undocumented population. You talk about people taking jobs. In this country, we're so hypocritical about this. We say, oh, you know, keep out, and then 10 yards in, what do we say? Help
Jose,
wanted.
A lot
right?
of people watching this stream might say, but he's not here legally.
Was that?
A lot of people watching this stream will say, but he's not here legally.
And by the way, I outed myself 5 years ago exactly to say this. But now what? Like, do you think I actually deliberately want to be here illegally? I mean, for me, this has been fascinating just on the internet and how people are like, get legal. You know, like, I mean, the process for this is, by the way, Alison, I really appreciate you saying that this is hard. You know, migrating is hard. Like, this is not to move to another place. I haven't seen my mother for 23 years. She's in the Philippines. She's on a 16-year waiting list to come here. If I leave, I won't be allowed to come back. Actually, Canadians have been very friendly. I learned to speak like this because of Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, very nice.
So when I finally am able to leave the country, I think Canada is going to be one of the places I would come visit.
And Alison, what are people back in Canada saying about this election?
I mean, I speak to a few of them. I mean, you know, most of my friends are decidedly more liberal than conservative, so I can't really speak to the Canadian conservatives and how they feel. I mean, there's just been this new excitement about our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and about this. I mean, the national pride in front page news being Justin Trudeau meeting a plane of Syrian refugees. Oh. You know, like this is that Canada, and it's more of a selling point sometimes in the reality on the ground, but we've always said cultural mosaic, not melting pot. And our embrace and support of immigration is what keeps us going. And I think especially with aging populations and with birth rates where they are, I think it's absurd to continue an anti-immigration point of view.
Anthony.
I was in Canada last year covering their general elections, and it was fascinating because some of the issues that we're dealing with now also played out during that election. Stephen Harper made a direct appeal to voters saying that immigrants were endangering the country. And then you saw Trudeau make the case that we're a nation of immigrants, we should accept more, and ran strongly on expanding Syrian immigrants. Donald Trump is trying to make that an issue. He keeps accusing Hillary Clinton of wanting to open the borders to refugees without any kind of screening. When you listen to Hillary Clinton, she doesn't play that up quite as much. She doesn't try to take as outspoken a stand on it as Trudeau has. So it'll be interesting to see if she tries to defend herself or even turn the issue around for her.
Well, migration is a global issue. I mean, look what's happening in the UK, right? I mean, I think here in this country, you talk about demographic shifts. This country is only going to get blacker, browner, more Asian, gayer. Yeah. More women will break all barriers there is to break. So, to me, one of the things that are at stake in this election is figuring out, how much change can straight white men handle? I think that's a big question. And in some ways, that's the question that Donald Trump is actually asking us.
And you talk about that. I mean, let's just get into the fact that obviously, Hillary Clinton last night became the first woman for a major political party to win her party's nomination. Alison, how much sexism have you seen or heard around this? I mean, certainly in 2008, it was a lot more overt sexism. I, covering this time and last time, haven't seen as much this time, but I did have someone last week saying there's no way we can have a woman in the White House because she's too emotional.
Right, and I think there is, I think it's been easier to couch the Hillary comments in she's a criminal, she's not prepared, she's a hawk, she's all of these things, because I mean there is this loud voice and voices joining him on the other side saying, women are pigs, are judged on their appearance. There is such outright vitriol directed at women from Trump and some of his supporters that I think, and an anti-politically correct voice rising, that I think everybody else has sort of couched it in these other terms, like, no, we're not that. And you're just like, well, no, but there's a lot of talk about her pantsuits.
You think some of the criticisms that they say are political criticisms about Benghazi or other things, the emails, you're
right.
saying that has undertones? Because they would say that's just a fair criticism, whether it's a man or a woman.
Right, and I think a lot of it is decidedly fair. I also think the standard she's held to, in terms of her laugh, her appearance, her eating, which any politician may go through, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like how does a female politician get through those hurdles?
Let's just get through a few more comments. Yanni Sheng says it's not about immigrants, it's about the contribution to a country's economics like Canada. And I think we have some more comments. Michael says immigration and NAFTA are taking away jobs. And Alan saying the Democratic field of candidates weren't exactly diverse.
So let's talk about the NAFTA thing, right? I mean, I think this is a really important point to make. We talk about immigration work here, right? Like NAFTA didn't just impact American workers, it impacted Mexico as well, right? I mean, that's why at that point, like, there were so many more Mexicans coming to this country to get a job, right? And, here we are in Philadelphia, right, where the founding fathers drafted the Constitution. When they were drafting the Constitution, remember, the founding fathers, when they got here, there were no immigration laws. They had no papers, right? And when people talk to me all the time about being here illegally, well, how did you get here? Right? Like, where did you come from? How did you get here? Who paid?
But Jose, many people, I bring Anthony in, many of the criticisms, we hear it from people when we go around the country. They say that they're out of work and that these rules are taking jobs away from them. I mean, Anthony.
There are real victims, real negative effects from trade deals. Trade deals on the whole lift all boats, and it will help people in Mexico, in China, who are creating products, who are getting better wages. But there are people in the United States whose industries are disrupted by this. Steel manufacturers, clothing manufacturers, they're seeing their jobs go away. And so they're going to have to, I think the policy has to address that. And Hillary Clinton tried to do that, talking about the coal workers. She said, they're going to lose their jobs, and that was the soundbite that everyone's played up. But then she said, we have to be there for them and help them adjust. But that's a difficult argument to make, because everyone hears trade is going to cause them to lose their jobs.
But to your point, they want someone to blame. So why are they blaming the undocumented workers who are actually getting exploited, instead of actually looking at the employers who are exploiting both camps, right? This country is addicted to cheap labor. I'm sorry, who built America? Black people, right? And now we have all these immigrants helping this country, and we pretend as if there are a bunch of criminals who are taking away, when really, in fact, they're the ones who are making sure we have strawberries, tomatoes, all of that.
Anthony.
I think what's fascinating to look at this election is that free trade used to be a bipartisan issue. The elites on the left and the right would come together and agree.
Well, it's economic liberalism.
Exactly. In '93, Bill Clinton spearheaded NAFTA, and he had support from many Republicans, probably more Republicans than Democrats. But now we see Hillary Clinton saying she's not going to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Donald Trump has made that a central issue and has condemned it time and time again. I mean, it's a massive change, a paradigm-shifting change in the way the American public and the politicians reflect this, deal with trade.
And just very quickly, if you are just joining us on this BBC Facebook stream, do send us your questions and comments. We've got a great panel with us this morning, and hopefully we can get some more comments that we can read out shortly. We'll just get some new comments on the screen. Alison, you were talking about economic liberalism.
Well, I think a lot of these trade deals have done, I mean, you look at what it's done for China, and obviously China's been vilified in the last few years. I also think there's such a lag time in getting any legislation specifically against China. Right now, China's losing jobs to Vietnam and Bangladesh. You know, domestically, there was, I just read a history of a specific furniture company and its move from, you know, the Northwest or sort of Midwest to the South, where there were fewer union rules, and then company towns and all of these things, and then the slow move away toward fiberboard and cheap shipping and cheap oil and what that's done. And there's a new reality. Are textiles going to come back? I don't know. I think the focus on infrastructure is amazing because those are jobs that cannot be exported. Yep. You know, building those, that's not going to go to Chinese, Vietnamese, and Bangladeshi workers. If you're that concerned, there are things to do on the ground here that we can create jobs.
Anthony.
If you look at global poverty levels, they've actually been declining. They're the lowest they've been in human history. And I think part of that is free trade. But people here don't feel it. I think the Americans actually, when Donald Trump talks about making America great again, they point towards the 1950s, the post-World War II era. We were kind of at an artificial high at that point because we were one of the few industrialized democracies still standing. And we benefited from the fact that Europe was in ruin, that we were able to sell products all over the world. And it's been slowly, incrementally changing. The rest of the world has been catching up with us. I think that it's easy to explain that academically, but people feel it viscerally that they're losing something.
I have been traveling since coming out as undocumented 5 years ago. I've 800 events in 48 states in the past 5 years. I made a film called White People for MTV, all about, again, what do white Americans think about all these changes? And how do we talk to working class white people about this and build empathy, right? Which I think is so lacking when it comes to this.
But Donald Trump is tapping into that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people we've
Absolutely.
met and we see it.
Yeah.
They are his
But
a lot of
it has been based on misinformation and factless claims.
Let me just bring this in because Patty's got a question.
It's a great
she
question.
says Republicans did talk about how diverse America is, but they don't focus on identity politics like the Democrats do.
But what's identity politics? I mean, in Cleveland last week there were American flags everywhere. Here you don't need an American flag because people themselves are actually the diversity, right?
I mean, that's it. Like yes, they did talk about diversity, but if you looked at the crowd of people, they were not. It's one thing to talk about it; it's another thing to be it.
And this is an interesting issue when we look at who might win, isn't it, Anthony? Because there is a theory out there that if Donald Trump can actually galvanise enough of the white vote, because he's not doing as well with diverse communities, he could win anyway. I mean, Anthony, just bring us up to speed on that.
He will have to win a near historic proportion of the white vote. He's doing much better, particularly among non-college educated white males, but he would have to get Reagan 1984 level white turnout and white support in order to make up for the problems he's having with black voters, with Latino voters. Yeah,
with
these
women.
are all and women voters.
Women,
and so
which
the
is
question,
a lot of voters.
Well, the question is it enough? And will it be enough? I mean, right now the polls are up and down, but they show it close. And they show it close because of this massive advantage he has among white voters. And if you look at where these white voters are, they're in the industrial Midwest. They're people who have lost their jobs, who feel like they've been abandoned. The upper middle class on the coast are doing pretty well. Poverty levels in the U.S. are declining, and they're seeing their incomes rising. But there's a segment of the population, the lower middle class, the blue-collar working class, the ones who had factory jobs, could go in, punch a time clock for 40 years, and then retire with a decent pension. They're the ones being left behind.
And when we look at changing demographics, there is a huge growing Hispanic population, but the Hispanic vote doesn't turn out as much.
And that's why I think, you know, this is, in many ways, Donald Trump has become the biggest and most effective organizer of the Latino vote, of the Asian vote, of the black vote, right? But here's the thing. I mean, you talk about identity politics. Like, I think to me it's sad that we're living in a country where one party, right, is being considered the anti-black, anti-Latino, anti-gay, anti-women party. That is not healthy for our democracy, not at all. And, you know, as somebody who's neither a Republican or a Democrat, I think we have to figure out what are the root causes of this, right? I mean, I'm sure the Republican Party doesn't want to be that party,
No,
right?
I mean, there's like the Reince Priebus has been speaking forever about trying to open it up to the very clearly changing demographics of the country, and also that there are natural alliances that could be formed.
Absolutely.
What I think, I mean, one of the ways I think to get the white working class vote that you're talking about, these, the decimation of the unions in the last, I mean, 15, 20 years, but it's been shocking how little that's been a discussion for these voters. I'm like, this is the natural. I was just talking to Teamsters in New Mexico while I was working there. I'm like, what? This vitriol against unions seems new to me. I mean, I know it's been in existence, but this seems like a way to get those Democrats who left in the 80s back.
And the thing is that people want an answer because they do feel left behind.
And guess what? We are not, right now I think we are where we are because we have not faced ugly truths. We have not actually had uncomfortable conversations about these issues.
So let me ask you,
Donald Trump is running a presidency through Twitter, which is like the least contextual thing you can possibly ever do.
He's not president yet.
Well,
He's just running a campaign.
I got to tell you, though, traveling this country, I am not going to be surprised if President Trump happens.
Okay, so just quickly on the point you made before, you said this has been like this for a while. So how much does President Obama have to take responsibility for this? He's speaking here tonight. Alison and Jose, what do you think of that?
In terms of take responsibility for the people feeling left out, I think many of these issues have been bubbling for a while, and I think the election of the first black president brought a lot of it to the fore. To put it so obviously out there that there is a changing world, and that now we have a black president, we have a possible female president. It's a changing time, and I think it's less anything he did. I think he's done an amazing job. I mean, I think the Affordable Care Act was a great victory for most Americans. I mean, I think getting people on, I'm Canadian, we believe in health insurance. You know, like, this was a huge victory.
And a lot of people hate that.
I know they do.
That's a very divided
No,
issue,
I know
isn't
I know it is, but I also think in trying to be a good president, he's mostly just been a galvanizing force for a lot of.
Like for me, I covered Obama in 2008 when I was at the Washington Post. I mean, I think you cannot overstate how his race, right, has really played a role in a lot of the opposition that has been happening. But I'm in a really interesting, weird position here where I have to say President Obama is responsible for deporting more immigrants than any other president in the history of this country. I mean, we talk about President Trump, maybe President Trump.
You were already giving in the election before we had it.
President Trump, Donald Trump has yet to deport anybody. President Obama has deported more than 2 million people in this country, right? And that's a sad fact. I don't think the Obama administration can ever fully really explain this years and years and years from now, why he had to do that.
Okay, so we just have to wrap up now, very quickly in a word, and then we'll have a final thought with Anthony. Who do you think is going to win in November? Alison?
I hope that the baby girl I have that will be delivered right after the election will come into a world where it's not President Trump.
But who do you think will win?
I hope it's Hillary. I mean, I do hope, and I do think in the end, Donald Trump is not presidential enough to lead this country.
Jose?
Look, I hope that Hillary Clinton prevails. I hope that she does. I hope enough people galvanize that she can actually prevail. And, on immigration, she's absolutely the right choice for us.
Now, just to wrap up, Anthony, what's the latest that the polls are saying?
Well, the polls are showing Donald Trump has taken a slight lead, that he did get a bump out of his convention. But I caution everyone that polls right now are very unreliable. They bounce up and down around the conventions. Nate Silver of 538 was saying, if the election was held today, Donald Trump has a 60% chance of winning. But the election isn't held a day after the Republican convention and before the Democrats even hold their convention. I think we'll have to wait to see things settle down. But the electoral playing field is still tilted towards Democrats. The swing states tilt towards Democrats. And if Donald Trump can't make inroads among minority voters, he has a really tall hill to climb up among just turning out white voters in order to win. I would still say Hillary Clinton has to be the favorite.
But this is a very unpredictable election, of course. Thanks very much for joining us on this BBC Facebook chat. If you want more coverage, you can go to our website, bbc.com/news. We'll be back in the Facebook lounge, same time tomorrow.